When so often the headlines are filled with gossip, I want to take this moment to encourage the media to focus even more on the nation's drug crisis. This disease is one that affects everybody. It pays no attention to race, age, or socioeconomic status. Addiction has touched every part of our society in some way.
First Lady Melania Trump delivered one of the best speeches of the week, in my opinion, focusing on the opioid crisis, the fight against the coronavirus, and the racial division in our country. Let's bring in our panel. Dennard is the Senior Communications Advisor of Black Media Affairs for the RNC, former Governor of Maryland Bob Ehrlich, member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio, and Sinclair Media contributor Dr. Sebastian Gorka, and Sinclair Political Commentator Ameshia Cross. Paris, let me start with you. It was billed as the secret weapon, Melania Trump's speech. How did she do?
Mrs. Trump was fantastic. I think this was probably the most significant and effective speech that she has given as her tenure as our First Lady. She spoke to every issue that was on the minds of American families: education, the opioid crisis, COVID-19, racial and civil unrest, the economy. And then she was able to personalize it, talking about the effectiveness of the leadership and the compassion and commitment of her husband, the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I thought she did a fantastic job, A+.
And Ameshia, let's talk a little bit about what happened afterward. We've been talking about it. It's just driving me crazy that Bette Midler would come out and say something so nasty about the First Lady, just so nasty. Talk to us from the liberal point of view. What did Melania Trump bring to the convention?
This is going to be one of those rare occasions where I actually agree with Dennard. I think that Melania Trump was the highlight of the convention thus far. Before last night, I would have said that it was Nikki Haley and Tim Scott, but Melania came out and I think she surprised a lot of people. She not only showed empathy, she showed grace, she showed poise, she showed a level of concern. And as you know, she's been out from the opioid crisis for quite some time at this point. I think that last night she won some people over who might not have really felt close to her previously. And I think that she definitely brought a level of humanity to what seemed like a very vitriolic RNC thus far. She totally turned the page. She said that she wasn't going to be attacking the DNC or Democrats. And I don't think that she did within that speech. She pointed a vision, and I think that she came poised and ready to deliver a very strong message, and it hit well.
Mm-hmm. Bob, what do you think the juxtaposition between the delivery of the DNC and then the RNC this week? Your thoughts?
First of all, with regard to the speech, she did take some subtle shots, but she took the high ground, so I loved it. And secondly, First Ladies traditionally give safe talks, safe speeches. But she hit a lot of issues. So this was as much a policy speech, but it wasn't in her husband's MO. It was her MO. It was above the fray. It was, Jesus, a shame they take such cheap shots at us. But let's talk about some real issues here. So I thought it was a home run in that regard. With regard to the spirit of what's happening here, I mean, you couldn't have a greater dichotomy, light and darkness, quite frankly, pessimism and optimism. But again, Churchill said you can't throw stones at every barking dog. And the Democrats for 4 years have thrown stones at every barking dog. They've thrown stones at everything Trump related. They've thrown stones at the First Lady. And so as a result, their convention was pretty pessimistic, pretty negative. And it was not the sort of uplifting platform, uplifting message that we see from the Republican National Convention. Obviously, we're the incumbent. We want to talk about our record. That's to be expected. But the pessimism that characterized that convention is the reason I think there's not a whole lot of enthusiasm for Joe Biden on the stump.
And Sebastian, let's talk about that enthusiasm. I pointed out in the monologue that when you don't have a lot of enthusiasm for your candidate, you kind of talk about the empathy and the compassion and what the guy is like. He's a nice guy. Is that enough to get them over the hump to being an incumbent president?
Ehrlich, I didn't come up with it. Somebody else did, but it's absolutely true. Nobody in America, none of the 330 million citizens of this nation wake up in the morning saying, yes, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. It just doesn't happen. He's an old, white, senile figure of the establishment who's been in politics for 47 years. Nobody gets excited about that. People get excited about the most beautiful first lady ever, giving her most substantive, her longest speech. And you said it, Eric. It was full of substance. It wasn't safe. It was policy oriented, whether it was opioids or whether it was the cancel culture. That is a speech that excites Americans. And in the rest of the evening, hearing from farmers, hearing from small businessmen, hearing from Black Americans who, thanks to the president's First Step policies, are turning their lives around after coming out of prison. That's what gets people excited. And people are going to be very excited in 68 days to vote for my boss, Donald Trump.
We only got one time around. We're going to bring this panel back, but I just want to point something out, Ameshia, and we'll get back to you after the break. But there was not much policy, if any, in the DNC, in the whole convention, the whole week of the convention. All we've heard is policy coming from the Trump campaign and the Trump convention. Now, you may not like that or you may love that. I'm not sure, but the voters are going to decide in about 70 days. We're going to take a quick break and bring this panel right back.